For January 28th, sometimes I struggle to come up with a overall theme, but I want to focus on the Book of Awakening and how it talks about the inner world, your inner world, who you are, and how you show up in the outer world. And I will try to make all three of these cohesive, but sometimes I just can't do that, but I'll do my best. Hi, I'm Candy. I'm a hypnotherapist who's deconstructing from evangelical Christianity, and I know how mindset shapes our behavior. So in this series, I'm going to share my daily reflections from 3 different devotionals. The Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo, and that one's a little more spiritual, non-religious. Also, Jesus Calling by Sarah Young, which is a very modern Christian approach. And My Utmost for His Highest by Oswald Chambers, which is a very classic Christian angle. My goal is to help you see how each one of these devotionals or these day books might shape your mindset a little differently. And if you're into that kind of reflection, please like and follow for more. Let's get started. In the Book of Awakening for January 28th, we talk about how you have to learn how to show up in the world, what people can see, touch, hear, all of that, as your truest self. You have to learn how to do this authentically, because otherwise, just mere existence is going to be crushing. It's going to be brutal, and you will be miserable. And a lot of our misery comes from us not being authentic because we're afraid. We don't feel safe. And those are real concerns. Those are real things. But as we begin where we can show up authentically, we show others, we bear witness that it's possible to others. And when others show up authentic, the more of us that do it, the better the world gets. So it's not just for you. It is for all of us, because we are one, and we reflect. We want to reflect who we are at the core. We want to reflect that oneness. We want to reflect our unique way of reflecting that. And if you hide who you are, which is the tendency, we do it. And there are places and spaces where you kind of have to do that for safety reasons. But when you find an opening, speak up, be yourself where you can. Start small if you have to. Because when you don't, when you hide who you are, your heart becomes heavy. And he kind of describes it thinking of like a balloon. Mark Nepo uses this example of like a balloon. When it's deflated, it's heavier. When you fill it up with air, it's lighter, floaty. And that's kind of like what living authentically does. Your heart feels light. You feel happy and joyful. Much more happy and joyful, hopeful, when you fill your days with authenticity. Anytime you're authentic, it might feel strange at first because people are going to resist it, because they get to know you one way. You have trained them to relate to you in a certain way. You have programmed their subconscious, unintentionally in most cases, to relate to you a certain way. And when you change, everybody around you has to adapt to that. That's what like setting a boundary is. It's not about hurting others. It's not about just thinking about yourself. A boundary is, this doesn't line up with who I am. So I have to set this boundary here. I mean, as a recovering people pleaser, I've had to set up boundaries with how much energy I'm going to give to people. And there are certain people that just take. And so I limit how much. I still will give because that's my nature, is to be giving and kind and helpful. But I can only do so much, because what I used to do is just pour myself into people. And then I would get so hurt because people would not pour back in my life. They weren't there when I needed them, but I was always there for them. And so I had to find these boundaries so that I didn't grow resentful, because that's what was happening. That wasn't on them. That was on me. I had trained them, programmed them to think that way about me, that I'd just always be there. And then when I had to set up those boundaries, I had to reinforce them. That made me lose some people in my life. I'm not going to lie. And it was painful for me, maybe painful for them. I don't know. They seemed angry, and I'm sure it hurt, and I'm sure I've been on the other side of that coin too, where I was taking from somebody and they had to like draw a line with me. So being authentic, it is a light burden, very light, but it can be difficult to walk through in your life, especially at the beginning, especially as you're getting used to it. But it gets easier and easier, and you start to feel more joyful, more hopeful in your life. I mean, you can start with something just as small as, remember one time someone suggested, because I was trying to get a better routine in my morning. I have ADHD, and so sometimes I struggle with that. And, working for myself, I have to have quite a bit of discipline to stay on top of things, but I need some structure to do that. And so I will play around with my schedule sometimes. As the seasons change, I kind of need to change things. And one of the suggestions, which I love and I still go back to, is set something in the morning. The first thing that you're going to do is going to be something you really enjoy. If it's a hot cup of coffee, if it's time to read a book, if it's meditation, if it's working out, if it's eating something really good, plan something in the morning that gets you out of bed, that makes you excited to get out of bed, because you get to do that. And then just, set a timer. Like, this is my time just to indulge in whatever it is. So, I don't know, just a thought, some way to try to kind of figure out what sparks joy in you. Who are you? That inner world. And there's another quote. I may have said it on this series before, but I have said it other places. If you do not go in, you will go without. So you will have a lot of lack, or sense a lot of lack in your life if you don't go inward. You have to figure out who you are. You have to do that inner work to find out who that is. And after deconstructing from evangelical Christianity, that's hard, because in evangelical Christianity, we were told who we were. We didn't get to figure it out. We were just told, you're a Christian first. First and foremost, you're a follower and believer in Jesus. He's your master. Here's what he says to do. Obey. Trust and obey. Taught that from childhood. So it's a difficult thing to learn how to do, but once you do it, it gets easier, and the burden is much, much lighter, and you can enjoy life again. I promise. In Jesus Calling, the message is that Jesus is always with you, and that this is meant to bring you comfort. It's not meant to cause fear, though she specifically says that some people don't like this. They resent this idea that Jesus is always with you because they've been taught, they've been poorly taught, or let me see what other word she uses here. They've been poorly taught, or wounded. So some ill-taught or wounded believers fear Jesus' awareness of all they do, say, and think. But those who don't fear it, they find, blessings beyond all expectations. And I would swap out Jesus, because it's based in interpretations of who this Jesus was. He's been taught as a very judgy person, but also a very loving person. I know the Jesus, when I'm reading through the scriptures, he sounds like when I was a Christian, I didn't quite read him the right way, or this way. I want to say the right way, because there's many ways you can read him. Now, as someone who's deconstructed, I read him as someone who he pushed back against religious systems. He'd be pushing back against any system that tries to make you conform to a mold instead of being authentic. He was kind of a rebel, a revolutionary. He would be considered a heretic, in my opinion. And I love that guy. I love the idea of that guy. But him watching over me all the time is kind of a weird thing. What I think is more what would be fitting here is that you remember that oneness, connectedness. You remember that. And whereas Sarah Young would say that when you remember that Jesus' presence is with you, you'll see the world differently. I think then you'll see it through the eyes of whatever filter you have about Jesus. Is he white American Jesus? Is he brown-skinned Nazarene Jesus, who is he? Is he the rebel Jesus, or is he Jesus who enforces you following the rules and brought in a new set of principles with the New Testament? Is he Jesus that, supports the Old Testament and is one with that, crazy, angry idea of a God? I think when you remember that you are one with Source and Source is with you because you are one, you can't be separated from who you really are. You do see the world differently because you see that others are one with you and that we're all interconnected. And so if you hurt, they hurt. And if they hurt, you hurt. And if you're good to them, you're being good to yourself. And it's a much more beautiful, beautiful world. So I would take what Sarah Young, I know she doesn't mean what I'm saying, but I would take what she says and I would reframe it to just remembering that you are one with Source and you will see the world differently. And finally, for my utmost for his highest, he really talks about how you can persecute Jesus. And you do this when you're stubborn or you're self-willed. So you insist on things being your own way. And he talks about how, does what you teach others to do match how you live your life? So basically practicing what you preach, and I can get on board with that. I think a lot of times you have Christian nationalists, especially, pushing a certain way of living, and then behind closed doors, they're doing the opposite. They've been found out to be doing things that were quite disturbing. So being authentic to who you are is how I would say that. But he would say that you, be who Jesus wants you to be. That is really what he's saying is, God tells you kind of, he will tell you which direction to go, what kind of life to live, and you need to follow it. Now, in my own mind, it's very difficult for me because I do believe in this oneness of this, and I do believe that's what Jesus was talking about. So I interpret the Bible in a very different way than I did when I was evangelical. So I would read even my utmost for his highest, Oswald Chambers' words here in a different way. Like, if you insist that that your way is the right way, then you're going to try to legislate it, which is what we see some evangelicals doing today. And that hurts what God really wants. And God, to me, is Source. It's just this energy that's all that is. And it hurts because it hurts all of us. We all suffer when we insist that my way is the only way. Instead of, I want to live this way. Now, Oswald Chambers would probably not agree with how I'm saying this, but when you insist that everybody do things your way, that causes problems. But you should be able to live your life the way that feels most aligned with who you are. If it's not hurting yourself or others, let's have that condition there. That should be just understood, because yourself is connected to others, right? So we don't want to hurt others. We don't want to have power over them where we hurt them, because there are power dynamics in this natural world, and we need to use those to lift one another up, not push each other down. And that all depends on where you view things. So this is how Jesus, the idea of Jesus, is given to you, and then you can manipulate the world to fit whatever that view of Jesus. That's why this is so dangerous, to live your life as you see Jesus teaching you. Because I would say if you understand oneness, which I believe Jesus did, you could create a pretty beautiful world. But if you understand Jesus as somebody who has a very exacting way to live, and you have to believe a certain set of beliefs, otherwise you're going to be punished and burned forever for eternity, you're going to live a very different way. And it's going to be pretty toxic. And we see the evidence of that. And it's been throughout history, as long as religion has existed, which has been pretty much the beginning of at least Homo sapiens. It causes problems. It's meant to bring comfort, that there is something bigger than yourself. And there's beauty in that. And I understand that there's comfort in believing in something outside of yourself that can help you carry your burdens. But what if it's not outside of yourself? What if it's inside? And when you trust that inner knowing, that higher self, source, God, universe, it doesn't matter what it's called. Even when Moses asked God what his name was, it was I am that I am. Just I am. I'm existence. It's not a name, it's just existence. So when you believe that you are one with everything, just try it out. See how that feels. See how it feels to live your life that way. I don't think anybody who genuinely does it could say that it's not a better way of operating in your own soul and in the world. It creates a more beautiful world. That's all I have for today. Have a great day. Remember, you get to decide what you devote your thinking to today. You might not be able to control every thought that comes in, but you can definitely decide what you entertain. And whether it comes from something I've said today or something completely different, choose wisely and set an intention that truly benefits you and those around you. And if you found any value here today, don't forget to like and follow. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and let's keep our minds on what helps us love ourselves and each other a little bit better every day.